Let's bring in Mark Steven. Marcus, I get the sense, the longtime voice of the Calgary Stampeders, you guys kind of don't really know what to do with yourselves right now. Am I right on that?
No, I agree totally. Yeah, totally. It was weird this weekend watching, knowing that neither of the games had any impact of the week to come or anything like that. So it was strange. Yeah, it was a little odd. And no West Final, no Grey Cup. So, yeah, it was a little strange. It's not something I hope to get used to, but got to deal with it in 2024.
Well, you know where we're going with this. 18 years in the playoffs. This is the first year out. I'm wondering what the Stamps fan base is, how they're handling all of this and the moves made this week. Because you know Saskatchewan, if you had the worst record in the CFL, it's fire everybody. And they probably would. Mm-hmm. But they're not in Calgary. What's your take on how things went down this week?
Well, first of all, there is a lot of anger and frustration with the team. Make no mistake about that. The two targets are Dave Dickinson and Jake Maier. Obviously, the organization decided to give Dave a shot to turn things around, another opportunity there. So, and then he had to make some big moves. I mean, they just simply can't run it out. This is not a one-off, a couple of bad things happen. It's consecutive seasons where they're 11-24-1, and they just have to do things differently. I mean, bottom line is they're 9th out of 9, and they've got to find a different way to do it. So once Dave Dickinson's status was clarified, and I'll give them this much, they didn't leave anybody hanging with that. I wasn't surprised. I don't know if I thought the exact moves would happen, but I knew something had to happen, and here we are. They're looking for two coordinators.
What is your read on the fact that the Calgary Stampeders don't have a number one quarterback? That's never happened.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's going to have to change, and just like their approach is going to have to change. They'll have to have a defined number one. He isn't on the roster right now, I don't think. So, they're going to have to go out and get someone. They're going to have to do things differently, as in, they've never been the big dog in the free agent pool. Well, that's got to change. They've got to do much more and sort of break their mold to go out there and get one. So, no, it is odd. And, Jake Maier fell short. I wouldn't completely rule out Jake Maier returning, but it would certainly be in a vastly different role, that's for sure. But no, the number one quarterback thing is going to have to be addressed and get that defined, productive number one quarterback. There's obviously, I think we can write up a pretty quick list of who's out there. And they also brought up a PJ Walker from NFL. He came up and was here for 3 weeks and worked out. He seemed to like it, but whether he wants to commit, I don't know. But it's going to be interesting. I'll say this: the busiest place in the CFL this offseason, I predict, will be Calgary.
Remind me to ask you this, because Jeff, the Stamps fan, wants to know who you are hearing as names as defensive coordinator and special teams. But before we do that, I just want to ask about Jake Maier. And Mark, did they whiff on Jake Maier? Because, that's who's kidding who? Dave Dickinson, John Huffnagel, they know quarterbacks. So what happened there?
Well, I guess they didn't hit a home run is a better way to describe it, I guess. And that's the difference. He did, you look at his stats, they're reasonable, but it's the inconsistency and the fact they didn't find the end zone enough. So he did some good things, and but having said that, they won 5 games, and that's on him as well as many others in the organization. So that's why I'm not going to completely rule out him coming back, because he did do some things, he did show something, but it's not enough to be a number one, take charge quarterback. I mean, just look at where the 4 teams remaining are. They've got those take charge quarterbacks, and the Stamps don't have that right now. But Jake Maier did some things. I would say they didn't hit a home run as opposed to whiff. If he didn't do anything, I would say it was a whiff. He did do some things, but not nearly enough.
Well, there are a lot of coaches out there looking for opportunities. Let's be honest. There's a lot right now. There will be more once the season concludes. So would you be willing to go out on the limb and say what you might be hearing there?
Well, I can say a couple of things. First, on the defensive coordinator, if they look internally, they do have a couple of coaches on the staff. Dwayne Cameron is a defensive back coach who, has a fairly deep resume, particularly in Canadian content. Having said that, if you do name him the defensive coordinator, that would take him away from his Canadian scouting responsibilities. And, all I can tell you is Stamps didn't do a lot successfully this year, but they did nail it with the draft, and that's on him. The other guy that is on the staff right now is Bob Slowick, a veteran coach. He's been, defensive coordinator for 4 NFL teams and for Montreal for a couple of years. So he is a candidate. but outside, I don't have any one of these guys handicapped. I don't even know if they know for sure just yet, because this only happened a handful of days ago. But two organizations you have to watch. I mean, is Edmonton going to retain their coaching staff, starting with the head man? And I don't know that. But if they don't, somebody's going to pop free. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to do something in Vancouver, too. I think Rick Campbell will survive, but he may be under the gun to shake things up. So maybe some other coaches there pop up. I don't know. But it's a little early right now, and nobody's going to say or do much until the Grey Cup is over. As far as special teams coach is concerned, I would be shocked if it's anyone other than Craig Dickinson.
By the way, I appreciate you standing in the batting cage and just fielding these like John and these CFL fans love to talk about it, right? John in Edmonton writes in and says, no, Mark, Edmonton has it busier since they're looking for a general manager, head coach, and half the team are free agents. Would you agree with that?
Well, maybe, but everybody has 30 plus free agents. So I don't put too much stock in that kind of stuff. Yeah, maybe. But once, Edmonton may have their GM and coach in place too. Let's not forget that. So let's not forget that they may have those guys. There's no hiring process. They just have to wipe the interim tag off of them. So they may not be in the market to look. I understand they're going to interview, and that's fair enough. But gee whiz, I think, based on what they did, given the circumstances, I think the two did a really good job. Had they played at that pace and been in, on the job the full season, it might be the Elks in the playoffs, not the BC Lions.
John in Edmonton, I hope that answers your question. I feel it does. I'm going to morph two questions into one. Janice says, how big of a player turnover is Mark thinking we will see? And Jeff, the Stamps fan, says, what's going on with player personnel? Any changes coming? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Take a swing.
Well, I think there'll be a fairly substantial player turnover. Again, they have to do things differently. And, they're going to have to address some of the issues, fortify some other areas. They're going to have to, work on player personnel in terms of bringing in their Americans. They're also going to have to find a way to retain what I call second contract Canadians. They don't have many on the roster. Why are so many free agents departing after their first contract? I don't know. Obviously, nobody keeps all of their free agents. I get it. But it seems to be, a bit of a one-way street. And it's frustrating to watch Toronto, to be blunt about it, when you see the large number of players. Again, you're not going to keep them all. I'm not here, but it seems to be an awful big exodus.
You have a good memory, Mark, and you're far smarter than me. So you remember when the Riders rated you guys 20 years ago, you went into a dip too. This is twice now. History, right?
Yeah.
The good teams get rated.
Part of that
way it is.
Dip. Yeah, part of that dip a year ago was unstable and uncommitted ownership too. We can't forget that. So I don't worry much about the ownership here now today, but that's a big difference. So, but you're right. It's the last time they struggled. 2-3-4. It's like 2002, 3, 4. Yeah.
You can thank Shiv for that. Kirk in Toronto says, "Could you please ask Mark his predictions for the East-West finals?"
The Saskatchewan Roughriders will meet the Toronto Argonauts in the Grey Cup.
How about
both
that?
road teams are going to win. There you are.
A rematch of the 1997 Grey Cup.
Yes, no Doug Flutie around this time, so maybe the Riders can pull it off. But yeah, no, I see it. I really liked what I saw from Toronto. I heard just before I came on, there's a different vibe around Saskatchewan, because one thing the Riders have been known to do is get awful satisfied, awful quick with what they've done through the years. And I like Corey Mace, who's got a thumb on the pulse of it. They've achieved nothing just yet. I mean, celebrate for a few hours after the game, but they really haven't achieved anything yet. They may, but this is the next step. Not, if you came to training camp hoping you're going to squeak out the West semifinal, and celebrate it, then you got a bit of an issue, because that's not why you should be there.
Mark, you've angered them. Patrolman Pete in Winnipeg says, boo. And John in Edmonton says, what?
No.
Go ahead.
Like the Saskatchewan Roughriders, two-headed monster as the running back combination. They've got a really talented group of receivers. Trevor Harris seems on his game, so that's why I think Saskatchewan is going to go in there and shock the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
And John in Edmonton says Calgary can have McLeod Bethel Thompson. So there you go. Mark, this has been fun. I could go on.
Eyes might go the other direction. Yeah. I think they may have their eyes on another quarterback there, but anyway. But that's it'll really start to pick up. We can be a lot more definitive once the Grey Cup is over, when, people become free, because obviously I'm sure the Stampeders, and Edmonton for that matter, have their eyes on people that are currently under contract and in the playoffs to talk to. you better. I mean, those are the teams that are the top four, right?
There is a load of questions in the queue, but we are out of time. Mark, this has been fun. Popular guest. Thanks for coming on. All right. Talk to you soon, my friend.
Yep. Saskatchewan, Toronto. Book it.
Gotcha. Well, write it down. Mark Stephen, the voice of the Calgary Stampeders, joining us.